Hello everyone, thank you for taking the time to join today's session. I'm Pratiksha from Freshservice Product Marketing team, and we're also joined by Vishal Abraham, our Senior Product Manager from the Freshservice team. This is our third webinar in our Freshservice ITOM webinar series, and in today's session, I'll be talking about how to automate your request fulfillment and speed up your operations using the Orchestration Center. So before switching to the demonstration, I would like to give a quick introduction about the Orchestration Center and Orchestration Server, and then we'll discuss a couple of use cases focusing mainly on the how-to part of it. So meanwhile, during the demonstration, if you have any questions, please do post them in the Zoom section and we'll address them at the end of the session. All right, so let's get this started. As you all would be aware, a typical service desk interacts with a number of third-party applications. The technicians or service desk agents ends up performing several actions across these applications, either to resolve reported issues or fulfill service requests. With the help of the Orchestration Center, you can now automate all these actions right from the service desk and enable your agents to spend more time on complex tasks than these basic tasks. So let me quickly show you this in action within Freshservice. You can find the Orchestration Center from the admin page under the Help Desk Productivity. So here you'll see a couple of applications usually called as the orchestration apps, which you can install and use them within the workflow to perform actions across these applications. So we also have Orchestration Server, which allows you to take actions on the applications hosted on the private network. An orchestration server is an agent that you can install on the on-premise network, which allows you to route calls from the Freshservice to the private network. So currently we have an AD server integrated here. So do check out the solution articles that can help you out with the installation process. So now let's quickly take a look at our first use case. I'm going to demonstrate a simple onboarding use case, focusing on various actions that you can perform in your Microsoft Active Directory. So let's take a quick overview of the workflow, which we'll be configuring now. Whenever a service request is raised, we are confirming if it's an onboarding request. And now we are checking if that particular user already exists in the Active Directory by first getting the user details. So if the user is not existing in your AD, we are going ahead and creating that particular user by mapping all the attributes in the AD. So ensuring if the previous request is a success and adding the user to the multiple groups. So once again, we are just confirming that the previous request is a success and finally adding a note to the ticket. So let's quickly dive into the workflow and see how we can configure this. So I have a sample workflow here where the event is service request is raised and we are checking with the help of the condition block to see if it's an onboarding request. Now we can leverage the Zap node to connect with the Microsoft Active Directory. So here you'll see a list of applications that you have installed in your Orchestration Center. And I'm going to tie this to the Microsoft Active Directory. So we have a number of actions that are listed, which you can perform in your AD. But first we need to get the user details. So config is basically an AD tenant where you can get the user details. So generally when we select the user details, we need to provide a name over here. And the name can be from any of these parameters. So I'm making use of the SAM account name for this particular demonstration. And also I would like to give a small tip over here. So if you're using your Microsoft Active Directory as your SSO, you can map your SAM account name with a custom user field. And then you can make use of the placeholders to connect with your Active Directory. So over here, I've made an assumption that the company follows the first name dot last name logic for the SAM account name. So I'm going to map the inputs from the onboarding form. Now I'm making use of the condition block to see if a user exists in the Active Directory. So here we are using the meta system message from a previous app action request. Let me quickly explain what I'm referring to here. I'm just querying the user Vishal to see if he exists in the Active Directory. So if Vishal, if he does not exist in the Active Directory, we'll receive a system message saying Vishal does not exist. So this is a small tip to ensure that we are not wasting our transaction over a user who's not existing in the AD. So now let's go ahead and create the user in the AD. So we are updating the name over here by saying that the user first name dot last name should be his SAM account name. And I'm just giving a temporary password for that user. So here we are making sure that the user changes the password right after logging in the AD. Location from the form is mapped to the city over here. And I'm mapping the department. And I'm going ahead and enabling the user. Alright, so that's done. So now we have to ensure whether this particular request is success or not. So for that, I'm making use of a simple logic over here. So if the meta status code is greater than or equal to 200 and less than equal to 300, then we are confirming that it's a success. So ensuring that it's a success, we are going ahead and adding the user in the multiple groups. So based on the job title, department, or locations, there are certain groups that the user needs to be part of. We have used a simple logic over here. So for example, if the user is part of the finance department and if he is joining the India location, then there are going to be corresponding groups in the Active Directory for that department and the location. I'm mapping the location and the department across the group names. And I'm using the same format for the members as well. It's the first name dot last name logic. Let me quickly show you this in the AD. So we have finance and the India distributed groups over here in the AD. So based on the locations and the departments, we have already created few of the distributed groups in the AD. Shifting to the portal. So now we are again ensuring that the previous request is a success by using the meta status code. We're ensuring that all the conditions are satisfied. So ensuring that it's a success, now I'm finally going ahead and adding the node to the ticket. Let's go ahead and activate this workflow and test how this works. I'm going ahead and creating a service request. The details for the first name and the last name of the employee. Department, let's give that response. Job title, manager and location as India. Let's go ahead and place the request. Now let's check the activities to see if the orchestration app got executed. We'll wait for a couple of minutes to see if the node got active. Yeah. So a node got added saying that the user Ross Taylor got created and he's been added to the respective group. Now let's quickly switch over to the AD and see if the user got created. So I'm refreshing the AD. You can see the user Ross Taylor got created, and let's see if he's been added to the groups. So you can see that he's been added to the finance and the India groups. So let's quickly jump into our second use case and see how that looks like. The second use case that we'll be discussing is a very common use case across many service desk employees. So I'm going to demonstrate how we can enable our employees to reset their passwords without the agent's intervention when they are logged out from the system. The prerequisite to achieve this particular use case is the user should be logged in to the Freshservice mobile app. So let me quickly give you an overview of the workflow that we are going to configure. The users can raise a service request to reset their passwords with the help of the mobile app when they're logged out from the system. Once they raise a request, so we are making sure that it's a password reset request with the help of the condition block. So before moving to the next step, I would like to give a quick introduction about the web request node. So this particular new feature will be available to all our customers by the end of this month. So the web request node will help you to fire off an API request from the workflow automator to any third-party system that uses the REST API. You can then pass the response body you got from the web request node with the help of the JSON parser and reference the response outputs in subsequent nodes and actions. So I'll explain this in detail while configuring the workflow. So here we are invoking a web request node to generate a strong password, and we are confirming if the request is a success. So with the help of the JSON parser node, we are passing the JSON payload that we got from the web request node. And we are using the output in the following conditions and actions. So now I'm getting the user details from the AD and resetting the password for the user. So also we are ensuring if the reset password request is a success and going ahead and unlocking the account for that particular user. So now once again, I'm checking if the request is a success and forcing the user to change their password after logging in. So finally, I'm adding a note to the ticket along with the new password. So you can go ahead and also send an email to the requester along with the new password. Now let's see how we can configure this workflow. We have a very basic workflow setup here. So we are triggering the workflow whenever a ticket is raised, and then we are checking with the help of the condition block to see if it's a password reset request. Now we are going to pull the web request node to trigger a get request and to automatically generate a password. So I'm using this endpoint to automatically generate the strong password, and I'm using the authentication type as no auth for this. So you can also perform your request on your on-premise network with the help of the orchestration center. So let's go ahead and label this web request node. Now we need to ensure that this particular request is a success. So for that, I'm going to pull the condition block and use the status code of the web request node. Ensuring that's a success, let's test the web request node and copy the sample response that we got. Now to parse the JSON payload of the web request node and use them in the subsequent actions and conditions, we bring in the JSON parser node. Map the source from the web request node and we have to paste the sample response into the payload section. Hit the generate output. For that, let's label a node. So this will automatically create the outputs based on the schema of the payload that we have given here. Now to ensure if the user exists in the AD, we need to get the user details. So with the help of the Discovery Pro, you can map your SAM account name from the AD to your custom user field in Freshservice. So I'm going to use the SAM account name that I've already have as a custom user field. Now to ensure that if the user exists in the AD, we are making use of a small logic here. Once that's done, let's go ahead and reset the password for the user. So I'm mapping the SAM account name from the app fields. And for the new password, I'm using the JSON parser data. Now let's ensure that this request is a success with the help of the status code. We'll go ahead and unlock the user from the AD. So once again, we need to ensure that it's a success. Now to ensure that the user changes the password after logging in, we need to go ahead and update the user profile in AD. So once that's done, we can go ahead and add a note to the ticket, or you can also send an email to the requester along with the new password. Now let's quickly jump into the end user view and see how this works. Further, let's go ahead and activate this workflow. I'll be raising a password reset request from the Freshservice mobile app now. So logging out of the AD will not affect an ongoing session in the Freshservice mobile app. So we just have to ensure that the users are logged into their Freshservice app while raising a password reset. We'll quickly switch over to the Freshservice app and see how this works. I have logged into my Freshservice mobile app as a requester. Now let's go ahead and raise a password reset request. So we have created a ticket. Now we'll switch over to the portal and have a look at it. You can now see that the ticket got created. The note with the new password has also got added to the new ticket. You can also go ahead and send an email to the requester directly with the new password. That brings us to the end of the session. So before switching to the Q&A session, we have collated a few useful links you can make use of. So Vishal, would you like to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Pratiksha, first of all, for taking us through these two use cases. And thanks everyone for joining and taking the time to be here. So the orchestration center is really something that we built on top of a pretty powerful workflow automator. And automation in general is an area that we're constantly investing in. So we've compiled a list of useful links that are going to help you in your automation journey, not just from an orchestration perspective, but also from the workflow automator in general, because we've shipped a number of things for the workflow in general over the last few years. And it's important to sort of make the most of all of these things. So the first link that we're seeing here is an overview of the orchestration center. So this covers everything that we covered in the webinar and more. It also has sample use cases, videos at the bottom. Tells you how to configure an app. Tells you how to read the execution logs and what to make of the different statuses. Tells you how to map things from a service item form using placeholders. All of that good stuff is sort of rolled up into this one article. So I strongly suggest that you get started with this article first, and then move on to the next one. Right. So the next one is the orchestration server. So as Pratiksha already mentioned, we have a number of apps where you need to take actions across certain private networks, right? So Active Directory being one of them. We also support PowerShell. We support SSH commands that you can take on Linux machines. Jenkins is another app that can be deployed on a private network. So Yeah, a number of apps. So the orchestration server is really the trusted agent that sits on that private network and allows us to sort of take actions on applications and systems hosted on that private network, right? So you can use that to get started with the OSR. The third link we have is really important, which it's a catalog of all the different applications that we support. Right today we support about 32 apps, but we're constantly adding apps month on month, right? And we listen to your requests that come in via our support portal for requests for new apps as well. So each of these app folders will have a detailed installation guide on how to install and set up the app, and also a sample use case or two where you can reference how to actually set up a end-to-end workflow for a sample use case, which should give you a gist of how to use the app in general, right? Yeah, so this is one that we're showing for MS Teams where we notify a certain channel when a high priority incident is raised on the service desk. Many more examples that you can reference. And then we have FAQs for the Orchestration Center, which is, again, a compilation of questions that we've seen our customers ask, and we're constantly updating this as well. So do take a look at this. Also from a pricing perspective and how transactions are metered and so on, and what you need to know about that. All of those details are given here as well. Right. The fifth one is, again, a capability that really complements what we're doing with automation, not just orchestration, but automation in general. So liquid filters is something that we released pretty recently, and it enables you to perform string-based operations, numeric operations, data operations. There's certain formats that you need to do, right? So I think Pratiksha, in this example, when she created that user in Active Directory, she used a very simple logic of stringing together that first name and that last name. Other organizations may do it differently. Maybe they just want the first character of that first name, or truncate, the first three characters of the last name, and so on, right? So if you want to do things like that, do look at this article. It'll give you a pretty good overview of how to make the most of liquid filters when you're dealing with string-based operations, date-based operations, all of that kind of stuff. It goes really well with orchestration in general. And then we have the sixth link, which is the use of custom objects and workflows. So a lot of you post questions about, hey, can I map the OU path based on which location or which department that user is being onboarded to? Yes, you can. So you can either hard code that within the workflow using conditions. You can use a condition block, check what the department is, and then write that user into a particular OU. Or you can store the mapping of department and OU within the custom object and reference that within your workflow, so that you have a central repository that you can reference and easier to maintain from that perspective. So this is something that really helps you streamline your automations and build it out in a way that's more scalable. So do take a look at that. And 7 and 8 really go hand in hand. So the JSON parser node really goes hand in hand with a new capability that we launched recently called the web request node. The web request node allows you to fire off, APIs into any third-party system. But unlike webhooks that also do a similar functionality today, you have the response available for you to pass within the context of the workflow. So you do have the response body available within the workflow context, and you can use the JSON parser node along with the web request node to actually use the response body and use that in conditions and actions and so on. So this is just for you to integrate with other systems that we may not necessarily have an app for within the orchestration center. So this is really any open API system that that has connectivity that way. You can use this to integrate with those systems as well. And I think all of these links combined together, I think, should set you up pretty well to take you on your automation journey. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I see a couple of questions around whether these links would be shared. Yes, we'll be sharing this slide deck as well as the recording post the webinar session in the next couple of days. Yeah, cool. Questions. I think we have answered most of them on the Q&A and chat. Vishal, is there anything specific that you would like to address to the larger group as well? Any specific best practice or any question that you think would be helpful for the larger group?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we can do is, we're building a community here of pretty complex workflow builders. So we do put up posts, that when we interact with our customers, a number of them, right? We learn how to build more optimized workflows. So we put up these tips and tricks in a series called the Workflow of the Week on the Freshworks community. So we will probably send that link across to you after the webinar. So it is a series that we'll constantly be updating. And if you guys have workflows as well that you've constructed that you think are pretty complex, or that you think other community members may find useful, you can obviously reach out to us, and we'd love to showcase that within this series as well.
Yeah, so we'll be adding like complex workflows, any new stuff that we ship in Orchestration Center and workflows in the Freshservice tips and tricks section. You can search for Workflow of the Week hashtag within community.freshworks. So you should be able to find them here. And I'll also post the recap of like the last 2 sessions of the ITOM webinar series, in case if you're interested in alert management or SaaS management features in Freshservice, you can watch those recap in this YouTube link here. Perfect. Great. I see a couple of new questions. Let me check. Okay. Yeah, the links will be shared with all the registrants in the next couple of days, and we'll be uploading them to our Freshservice YouTube channel as well. Yeah. Okay. Vishal, I see a specific question around, can these workflows link into Intune? I know we have a Intune app for our asset management, but is it anywhere related to workflows?
Yeah, I mean, we do have an Intune app that syncs your devices from Intune into our inventory. At the moment, we don't have a direct orchestration app for Intune, but as I said, you can probably leverage the web request node. I know Intune supports APIs as well, so you can probably use those to integrate with Intune from an orchestration perspective or from a workflow perspective, at least until the app is supported.
Great. Cool. Yeah, we have answered most of the questions. The recording will be shared. I see 2 more new questions around that. Recording the useful resources, whatever we shared today, and the link to the workflow of the week in the community section, we will share it in the follow-up email. And we also have 1 more webinar in the ITOM webinar series planned for the 2nd week of September. It's actually a preview into a new feature that we are working on in alert management. So if you haven't already registered for the webinar series, you can do it right from the link that I'm posting in the chat section. Cool. Yeah, if you have any feedback on workflows or Orchestration Center feature, please do write to us at support@freshservice.com. You can also use the feedback option within Workflow Automator. So please do write to them. Please share any feedback. If there is any feature request, please do send them along the way. Yeah. Great. Any other comments, Vishal? Any questions or chat questions that you'd like to talk about?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you all for joining in. Looking forward to seeing you all in the next ITOM webinar session on alert management. Thank you all. Have a great day ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye.